what are some things that you just think people should know?
Do your research. Make sure you know what you're getting into. There's a fine line between doing your research and overanalyzing everything to where you can't ever make a decision. When you're ready, you got to be ready to jump. You can't really drag your feet, especially in the market that we're in right now. Opportunities come, and when they do, they come quickly.
Don't wait for the market to drop. That's gambling. Go do it when you're ready. Welcome to Lawrence Real and Local, Keeping It Real podcast presented to you by the Lawrence Board of Realtors. We're your go-to source for all things real estate in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm Lexie Haskin with Flint Hills Mortgage.
And I'm Campbell Ragan with McGrew Real Estate. Together, we're here to make the journey to home ownership a breeze. Join us as we share insider insights, expert advice, and a dose of fun along the way.
Okay, welcome to Lawrence Real and Local, Keeping It Real podcast by the Lawrence Board of Realtors. My name is Lexie Haskin with Flint Hills Mortgage.
And I'm Campbell Ragan with McGrew Real Estate.
And we are joined today with Steve LaRue with McGrew Real Estate. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
So give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get into real estate? Just give it all to us.
Yeah. So I got into real estate when I was 22. I had a decent job at the time, selling construction supplies, and Kenna got pregnant. We had gotten married 2 years earlier, and we bought a house 3 years earlier. And the job I was at was a fine job, but there was a ceiling, right? You knew you were never going to get any further than that. And my uncle Russ Slang had helped us buy our house when we were 19, and I saw what my house was worth at 22 versus what it was worth at 19. There might be something to this real estate thing. And because I couldn't save that much money in that amount of time. And so a pregnant wife kind of was at that spot. I'm 22. We've got a car. We've got a house. If I try this real estate thing and I just absolutely fail, I can go back to a regular job. I can be back on my feet by the time I'm 30. And I've already got the things that I need. So went all in. McGrew took Mike and Dennis tried to kind of talk me out of it, and Gary Newsom just they're like, Steve, you're 22 with a pregnant wife. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? And I said, I believe in myself. I can do it. And so that's how I got into it. And
look at you now.
Well, I think it's starting off young. You have to work really hard. You know, back then people would say that it's kind of there was a lot of people who weren't working very hard, but were doing well, right? But as a 22-year-old, you have to work hard. And so I had some good work ethic from my last job and from growing up, and it worked out really well for us. So I had a wife that believed in me, and that was huge.
Aww,
and
yeah,
the rest is history.
You earned some points there.
Yeah.
It's all her.
And so Ken is also a realtor as well, and they're on the team. And then Steve is also involved in leadership. He left that out, and he is involved with KAR and the Kansas Association of Realtors, and so he's doing good things. So we're pretty excited to have him here.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I got into the leadership stuff honestly just by being asked by your grandma, like we were just talking about, and then it just kind of went from there. And the more you do, the more you realize the impact, and the more you realize that the system that we have in the United States really is set up because people have advocated for it for a long time before us. The fact that we have a 30-year mortgage is not a normal thing in other countries. And the fact that we do, and the fact that we have all the things that make homeownership as readily available as it is because people have before us gone up and worked for it. So just kind of felt like it was my calling to help with that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, sweet. Do we just want to dive in? So, I mean, you were also just talking about how much you even just saw your house was worth from 19 to 22. And I mean, that's kind of also what this is about, just investing in real estate. So, I mean, should you flip? Should you rent? Should you even buy? I mean, that's kind of what we're going to be going into.
Yeah. So, like I said, I engaged my wife, got engaged to my wife on her 19th birthday, and we bought a house when we were 19, and we still own the house. I'm still married, so I felt like I made some decent decisions early on.
Is it the same house?
So we still have the same house. Yeah, we never have sold it. So we are not in the high cash flow rental business. We're in the long-term rental business. When we started acquiring them, honestly, we started acquiring by the first house we bought on an FHA loan with 3% down on an $82,000 house, and just kept it. And then we just kind of did that when opportunities would come up. We would find a way to do it. We've done a few flips, but our game for the most part has been that long term. there's 100 different ways to do it right and probably 1,000 different ways to do it wrong. But
Yeah.
people just need to figure out what their goals are.
Yeah.
Not my personal philosophy is if I'm going to do a flip, I'm going to do a flip that I can rip my way out of. If the market turns quickly or something happens, I'm not going to be stuck with an asset that I can't do anything with. So
Yeah.
I try to, if I'm going to flip something, it's something I would have wanted to have as a rental as well.
As a rental anyways. Yeah.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of people with higher risk tolerances that I do that they'll flip $1 million houses and I'm just have never had that comfort level with it. But I think people really at the beginning of the day, they need to figure out what their goals are and what is it. Do you want money today? Do you want money in 30 years? Do you want money? How do you want to play the investment out? And that's going to decide, for one, what price is going to work for you on that, and then what your end goals and strategies are.
Yeah. I even heard of somebody who would buy a house every time they had a child, and then that was their nest egg. So instead of doing like a 529 account or an investment account, putting money away that way, they would just invest in real estate when they were a baby. And then when they grew, they could either give that house to the child to do whatever they want. If they wanted to sell it for tuition, if they wanted to just live in it, if they wanted to rent it out, have it as their own nest egg. And that was just what they did for their child to help with that generational wealth, because a lot of people don't think about that. But
I know a lot of builders too who have gone in, and it's not really flipping a house or necessarily, but they'll build their house, they'll live in it for at least 2 or 3 years, and then sell it and build another one. Because with the capital gains exclusion in the U.S., a married couple can claim up to $500,000 in capital gains exclusions on the sale of their personal residence. If they've lived there for at least 2 of the last 5 years. So for somebody in the industry who does that kind of thing, who doesn't necessarily get attached and tied to their home, there's definitely some great tax advantages to be able to get in there and do that kind of investing as well.
Yeah. Someone who's willing to move quite often though as well too. There's some different sides to it. But
we moved a lot when I was younger. I've been in my house now for 12 years. I don't ever want to move. I actually kind of, it gave me a new sense of empathy last time I did. It's like I almost felt a little bit bad that I try to encourage people to move as often as I do with as much turmoil as it is. So it's an emotional process.
I mean,
it is.
You definitely get rid of a lot of clutter that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just
it depends on
it
the
depends.
situation.
It depends on the situation. Oh my gosh. Well, I say let's dive in. Let's evaluate the best approach for goals. So, I mean, what factors should investors consider when they're deciding whether they want to flip a property or rent a property?
Yeah, and I think the main thing is are you looking for money today or are you looking for money tomorrow?
Yeah.
If you're wanting to flip, you're going to need to probably buy it cheaper than if you're going to hold it long term, because you're going to need to have enough margin there to make your money back. You're going to need to figure out, okay, what is my improved cost? What is the and you need to figure out what level of flipper you are. There's some people who do really lipstick on a pig type flicks.
We just talked about that in the last episode.
Yeah, I am not a fan of those.
You brought out the phrase though.
Yeah.
Like
it's and there's some that do that, and I suppose they're able to find success, but I don't see a whole lot of honor in that type of industry. So, but it works for some people. But so I typically start off looking at, okay, as if my wife is designing this house, which is going to make it really nice and over budget, but if that's going on, what's the value going to be at that point, right? And then I'm going to take out all of my costs to get to that point, and then I'm going to think about what are my holding costs, what are my commissions going to be when I go to sell it, what are my lending costs, all the stuff that's going to go into it, and then figure out what I'm comfortable with my margin being. Am I okay making 10%? Do I want to make 20%? Everybody's going to have their own individual margin that they're going to want to be in, and then back it off. And then I usually try to back a little bit more off, because nothing ever goes exactly as planned. So, and then on a if you're going to hold it for long term, though, again, you need to figure out what your goal is. I always liked being able to buy stuff with as little money down as possible. And that meant that I couldn't cash flow it, right? Usually it meant that I was either breaking even, or I might even be feeding it a couple $100 a month. But I was getting in without any of my own cash, and I'm betting on the equity to grow, because historically it does.
Yep.
And then at some point refinancing to where I'm in a more traditional mortgage or something like that. And if you can get in, for me, I was willing to pay a little bit more for the house if I could get those terms to work better for me, because I knew in 5 years it really wasn't going to matter if I paid $5,000 more or less. It was going to be how I could get into it and how I could make it work.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And on that too, with putting as little down to get into the home. So with that, if you're putting down 15% versus like 20 or 25% for an investment property, you will be paying it more for that rate, most likely. You get the best pricing if you're putting 25% down because it's less risk for that lender.
Yeah.
So just putting that out there for people.
Yep. And if you get to a point where you have good lending relationships,
Yeah.
sometimes you can, say you have 5 or 10 properties, you might be able to start borrowing against those properties to get your down payments for the next property.
Yeah.
And it really can help snowball the effect. Some lenders will work with you to where you could do a seller carryback where the seller holds 20% of the mortgage and the lender does 80%. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different creative ways to do the stuff if you've got people who are willing to get creative and
Yeah.
get outside the box sometimes.
Yeah. And if you
Definitely.
do have more than or 10 finance properties and you want to get another property, you can even do non-traditional financing like a DSCR debt service coverage ratio loan. So you can have unlimited number of finance properties with that as well. So there are options for people.
Yeah.
So little financing thing.
Are there specific property types or locations that are better suited for flipping versus renting here in Lawrence?
In Lawrence, I don't know that I would say one would be over the other for rental or flip.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to, again, I like to think about who my tenant's going to be, right? There are a lot of people who love doing student rentals, right? That is not my cup of tea at all. I do not like turning over a property every year because for some reason they like to move every year. I don't like the calls that the toilet's backed up, just the basic stuff. That's just not my patience level. So I tend to get stuff that's more, you think about what's that 45-year-old divorced teacher going to rent, right? And that somebody's going to stay there for 5 or 10 years, that the house is probably going to look as good as it does when you get it back as it did the day that you got it. You're not going to make as much money every month off of them. And you're not going to increase their rent as often as you do on them, but it's the headache level. I like less headaches. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I go that route, and I have a property manager that does a great job. Because again, my job as a realtor is making deals. It's having good relationships with people. It's not being the give me my money or you're out on the block. So I did it for a long time and I just did not enjoy it. So my joy and peace is worth the fee that I pay for my property management.
Yeah.
And it's worth every penny of it.
Now, when a storm comes through and they're talking about a tree just fell down, I need you to come take care of this. You're like, okay, on it.
Yeah,
Steer it over.
And one of those, I'll probably get the call on that, but it'll go to my manager first, and then I'll get the call. And like, Steve, do you want me to just hire the guy to do it, or do you want to get your chainsaw out and go do it? And depending on what my work level is, a lot of times I'm too cheap to hire the guy. I'll go do it. But it just depends on the day, depends on the project, and go from there.
Sometimes it's just a good workout.
Yeah.
Might as well, right?
Yeah, might as well.
I like working on houses. It's just, do I have time to do it? And does it make sense to do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do market conditions influence the profitability of flipping versus just renting?
Huge. Especially like I said, my philosophy is never do a flip that you can't rent your way out of. And that's because when the market changes, it changes quick. You can get into a flip project on day one thinking that you know what's going to happen in 60 days when you're going to be ready. Well, then coronavirus hits, or then 9/11 happens, or the Great Recession. Something happens, and it just turns everything immediately. And now that, say you had a 10% profit margin in there, well, we just went down 7% or something like that,
Yep.
Shoot, now what are you going to do? Now, if you have a rental, though, you just, it's long-term. It's you're riding it out. You're playing the long game. So market conditions can make a huge impact. Also in a market like we're in right now, where we have almost zero foreclosure rate.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find those distressed properties that make great flip candidates.
Yep.
You're looking more for, somebody who might've passed away, somebody who, for whatever reason, there's a house that just needs gone and gone quick, and they're not nearly as readily available as they were like in the recession time. So recession time definitely gave you more risk in being able to resell it, but it definitely gave a lot more opportunities for inventory.
Yeah. So have you ever found a house at like an auction or something like that?
I've never bought one at an auction. I've helped a few people buy stuff at auctions. In the foreclosure process, we get a lot of phone calls like, "Hey, I see this is going to the sheriff's sale. I want to get in on this." Like, that's great, but know that you're not going to be able to get into it. You're not going to be able to have possession for at least 90 days for the right of rescission rules. And you're going to be buying it as is. Oh, and they want to be paid that day.
Yep.
Like all of the money.
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh, that's
I
probably
don't know
not for
if I
me."
wanna do
Yeah, it's
that.
like, that's why the mortgage company usually buys it back at the sheriff's sale. And then typically they go through the typical sales process after that. More traditional like real estate auctions, the Florries do some. I think they've got one on the market right now that's going to go up for auction here in a month or so. I've helped people with those. I've never bought one myself that way though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering if like that would even make a good opportunity to find a home necessarily to do like a flip or find a rental or something like that. Just a little off
It
the
might,
box.
yeah.
Like I don't.
It's kind of funny. There's really nothing more competitive than an auction though. You get multiple people bidding on it. People say they want a bidding war on their house. Like, okay, well, let's start at $0 and see where it goes from there. We'll get a bidding war. Yeah.
I heard an idea recently about that, but we can share it afterwards. But it was kind of a cool like auction idea at an open house actually. So it was something that I heard in the past couple months, but we can talk about it later.
Okay.
It doesn't relate to the episode.
You're gonna leave other people hanging.
Yeah, I'll be good. If anybody wants to know
To be
it,
continued.
then to be continued. If anybody wants to know, reach out to me directly, and hopefully I remember what I'm talking about.
Oh boy.
So how does one determine a fair price for either the resale price or rent rate on the property?
Comparable properties typically are the best way. What else that's similar to it has sold? If you're not in the business, get a good realtor who knows values. Lean on them for expertise. On rent rates, a lot of times it's looking around at what else is renting in the neighborhood. I'm not above going and calling for rent signs to ask what they're asking for their properties. In the digital age, you can find about anything you want online with
Yep.
if you have rentals that you're not advertising online, you're probably not
You
getting
might
market
need a
rent for it.
management company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different ways to figure out what other similar things are renting for or selling for. And then on the buying side, it might be correctly priced, but you have to figure out, does it make sense to you as an investment? Are you going to, it might be absolutely worth every penny that the sellers want to sell to you for, but if it doesn't make sense in your financial portfolio, if it's not going to perform the way that you need it to do, it doesn't really matter if the value's right or wrong. It has to be able to work for what you're doing.
So what about this scenario? So it's under rented. They have a lease on the property, but the lease has 8 more months on it, and they're not really getting any return on their money. At that point, does it make sense for them to buy it knowing that they'll probably raise the rents and looking at it that way? Because I recently had somebody that I was helping out, and that was their situation, and then they just decided to sell within 8 months. And we're like, you didn't even get to raise the rents yet.
Yeah.
So
I've actually had quite a few investors here recently that are getting out of rentals for whatever reason. They've done them for 20 or 30 years, and they're like, I'm done with it. I want to just put my money in the stock market and have it be boring. And so they just want to make their life easier, but they've had the same tenant for 10 years that they haven't raised the rent on. And so now it's under rented, and now we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do, right? If we try to sell it to another investor, they're not going to pay you what it's worth because they're going to have to take on your tenant at your low rent.
Yep.
And they're either going to have to kick out the grandma who's a really nice lady, but not
they
paying
don't want
enough.
to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Or you're going to have to do it.
Yep.
And at that point, depending on what the property is it a property that makes sense as an investment property, or is it a property that makes sense as a owner occupant property? And if it's one that makes sense as an investment property, okay, well now we need to get it rented and rented at full market value if we're going to be able to get full market value out of it on
To
a
show
sale.
that it can be rented at that price.
Exactly, because it's one thing for me to say it's under rented at $800, but you can get $1,400 out of it. It's like,
well, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, if you could, why aren't you?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the mentality behind it. So if you're going to do it that way, that's kind of what you have to do unless you're willing to sell it for undervalue. And if it's an owner-occupied property, I've seen a lot of people, like if it's a duplex, okay, get it, split it out into 2 townhomes now, fix it up nice and sell it for top dollar. That's it made great sense to you as an investor, but it can also make great sense to somebody else as an owner-occupant, especially in situation like right now where we have just such low inventory, especially for the starter home market.
And then how do tax implications differ between the flipping and holding at rental properties? I know you kind of talked about that with the capital gains too.
Yeah. And on a flip, it's typically going to be counted as ordinary income. I'm not a tax advisor, so consult your tax advisor.
Yeah.
But typically, if you hold it for less than a year, it's going to be taxed like ordinary income. You could do 1031 exchange where you sell that and then take the funds from those proceeds into a different property. But if you hold it long term, you're typically looking at capital gains tax when you go to sell it, depending on what your tax bracket is. That's why a lot of times when we have investors who are trying to disinvest and try to get out of the business, they do like a property a year so that they're not taking huge tax hits every year. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about that. Like, one property a year, so you don't get like.
Yeah, because you think about you have to accumulate them long term, right?
Yep.
And then when it's time to let them go, we have to back them out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are the most common mistakes first-time investors make when they are flipping homes?
They try to do it as cheap as possible. I think that's probably the biggest mistake. People who try to go in and just get the absolute cheapest finish they can to maximize their value if they want to. And then it just ends up showing really poorly cheaply when we get on the market, sloppy paint, people who we just see some really bad flips sometimes. And
Campbell's like trying not to crack up.
It's
laughing.
like you could take just that extra 5%. Like of just effort. And it would make such a big difference. So that's
hiring someone versus trying to do it yourself. I'm sorry, but your paint abilities.
Yeah. Rough carpenters are not necessarily trim carpenters.
Yeah.
Just because you can frame a house doesn't mean you can trim it.
Yes.
So,
Know
absolutely
your limitations.
know your limitations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You couldn't have said that any better.
I'll admit I'm really not good at painting. Like I can do the middle part of the wall, but when it comes to like the cutting, that's not me.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Yeah,
that's where you can tell.
We can tell.
Yeah. I'll do the middle part of the wall, and then somebody else can come in and cut. Otherwise, it's gonna get on the ceiling and just on the outlets. It's just not my thing. But I'll do most of it.
Yeah.
Just not the
not the hard part.
When we were newlyweds, I'd come home and the middle of the wall would be painted orange or something like.
Cool.
Ken wanted a different color this week. But it's like, okay, I got to trim it in, don't I? Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Hey, get the ladder.
It's like, even when I tried it with the tape, I tried because I decided in college that I wanted a blue wall.
Yeah. These things happen.
This blue definitely looked like a fourth grader blue, and it didn't look like that in the store, but it did once I had it, but I was committed. So I taped it all up. I painted it, and then when I took it off, the paint was everywhere, and I was like, I even put tape down.
Yeah, people rely too much on tape.
I was like, I tried.
Tape will leak through, especially if it's on something that's not absolutely crisp. So,
well, I swear, I made that tape crisp.
Yeah,
I swear.
Well, you didn't. Clearly,
still can't slop the paintbrush in there.
Based on the story.
Yeah, based on the story. Yeah, I actually don't know if that wall is still like that. It was in my grandma's rental.
Oh no! Sorry, Grandma.
Does she still have it?
So they do still have it. I should ask my mom if it's if the wall is still blue.
Yeah,
I bet someone else painted it. They were like, we can't
deal with this blue wall in the middle of the living room.
Yeah,
this fourth grade blue wall.
Did you get your deposit back?
I actually
Grandma was good to you, wasn't she?
I didn't have to make a deposit.
Wow.
And I even had 2 dogs.
Yep.
That might have been the mistake that they made right there.
Yep.
I know.
In that moment when they saw the blue wall, they were like, should have done a deposit.
I was spoiled. I didn't even have to do a pet deposit.
Yeah,
I did have to beg to have my dogs, though.
We have our kids in one of our rentals now, so yeah. I get it.
You're gonna find a blue wall. Yeah. So what's gonna happen?
We are not going to find a blue wall. We've discussed this.
They set boundaries.
Yeah.
I swear, sometimes people just learn so much about me on this podcast.
Yeah.
I get up on gutters and with the leaf blower and just all the things.
And you're for hire?
And I am for hire.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah. I'll come over there with my leaf blower and I'll hope that it's charged. Otherwise, I might be coming back. But, oh gosh. Okay. So what are some things that you just think people should know just in general that we haven't covered that you're like, this?
Do your research. Make sure you know what you're getting into. But there's a fine line between doing your research and just over analyzing everything to where you can't ever make a decision. I've seen a lot of people who they had to do all this research, and then before you know it, it's 3 years have gone by, and the property they would have bought for $200,000 is now $250,000. So there's definitely
no time like the present.
Yeah, paralyzed by analyze, right? Something along those lines. So you got to make sure that you're when you're ready, you got to be ready to jump. You can't really drag your feet, especially in the market that we're in right now. Whether you're a buyer, a owner buyer or an investor buyer. Opportunities come, and when they do, they come quickly.
Especially in certain price points.
Yep.
It's just like, don't wait for the market to drop. That's gambling. Go do it when you're ready.
Yep. Timing the market, that it sounds great, but if you look at the last 75 years in Lawrence, we've gone up on average 5% a year. There's not been a time frame during there where if you bought a house here and you sold it 10 years later that you would lose. Now, there's times when you bought a house here and sold it 2 years later that you would lose, but that's not the long game. That's not what you should be doing if you're getting into real estate investing. You shouldn't be having that short of a term of commitment, unless you're doing flipping. And again, if you're doing a flip, well, that's then a different game. You're taking a bigger risk than what your average real estate investor is. So it is a good long-term, get-rich-slow investment strategy. You're in control of when you sell them. So the only people who I've seen lose in real estate are ones who sold when they shouldn't have. People who maybe they had to sell because they had a job relocation, or maybe they had to sell because they lost a job. Something there's instances where people have to sell their houses during the down times. But if you're getting into real estate investment, you need to be able to have the long-term stability that you can weather those short-term storms when the markets adjust in the wrong way.
And you have to start somewhere.
Yep.
Also, I want to say, if you are flipping a property and you are selling it, please be aware of somebody coming to you with a contract with an FHA loan.
Yeah.
Because there are different things that have to be in place. You can't write a contract within a certain time frame, depending on how much the value has increased. You might even have to get 2 appraisals. The second one, the seller has to pay for. The buyer cannot pay for the second appraisal. So just be aware of that. Be aware of the dates and how long you've owned the property.
Yeah. Is it 90 days after?
90 days.
It's a 90-day flip rule? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just on FHA, because I hadn't heard that rule. That's on FHAs?
FHA.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's nice seeing more FHA loans coming through. We had that stretch where it was just so hard to get an FHA or VA done, and to be able to get those first-time home buyers who really need to utilize those mortgage tools. It's huge. Able to see that happening now.
Yeah. Honestly, I love FHA loans. I think they're fabulous, and they have really good down payment assistance options with them too. And they're just honestly have great rates.
Yep.
And they're just good MI. I mean, it's just a great loan.
Yeah. Like I said, that was my first house, 3%. That back then it was only 3% down, so 3.5%. But it was got us in a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do.
Yep.
Get started.
Yep.
Get started. Don't wait.
Yep.
Invest in real estate. Do you like that rhyme that I just did? Don't wait. Invest in real estate.
Tagline.
Hashtag.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to the Lawrence Public Library. Signing out.
Thanks for joining us on Lawrence Real and Local, Keeping It Real podcast. We appreciate our guests taking the time to join us. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you've enjoyed today's episode.
For more information, please visit us on the web at www.lawrencerealtor.com. And remember, whether you are buying, selling, or simply dreaming of your future home, we're here to help. Until next time, keep it real
and happy house hunting.